Hello, everybody. Welcome to this See You at the Pictures at BBC Digital Cities event. And we just acknowledge our gratitude for the support of Northern Ireland Screen as well for this Moving Pictures programme series that we have put together. My name's Hugh. I'm the manager of Film Hub NI.
Yes, thank you all for joining us. As you said, this is a Digital Cities event, which we've been involved with Digital Cities for a few years now, doing several events. So this year, obviously, everything is online, so we're pleased to be able to deliver an event, and we're really, really pleased to have a brilliant lineup of panelists. And I should also say, this is part of a series called Moving Pictures, which is a program of events which has been training and mentoring, and there will be some podcasts that have been funded by Northern Ireland Screen to help people get online, to help film exhibitors to get online and really explore the opportunities that are there. And we have this training program, but what we really wanted to do was run this event as a bit of a cheerlead for the cinema.
As Sarah was saying, this is part of a wider program. I'm Hugh, I'm the manager of Film Hub NI, and that was Sarah, who is the marketing and audiences coordinator for Film Hub NI as well. So you know what this is about. This is about where does the theatrical window, where does the theatrical exhibition exist in this new and modern online world where people have migrated either willingly or unwillingly to an online sort of reality. And when we come back, what's it going to be like, and what's it going to look like, and how are things going to work? And we are delighted to be joined by a stellar panel today. We have Joan Parsons, head of Queen's Film Theatre. Hello, Joan.
Hello.
And we have David Frayne, who is a writer and director of The Cured and Dating Amber. Hello, David. And we're also lucky to have Patrick O'Neill, from CEO of Wildcard Distribution. Hello, Patrick. It might be worthwhile maybe starting with Joan, just in terms of how you have responded and are responding to the year that's just passed, Joan.
Yeah, so we were first closed on St. Patrick's Day last year, and we very quickly decided to move into looking at building some sort of online profile / home for QFT. It was really important to us that we didn't just kind of go quiet on our audiences. I think partly because I know that we have an incredibly loyal audience out there who would be on our case if we weren't doing anything, but also because I think we were keen to be active and communicative and supportive of kind of film culture while our screens are dark. So we launched QFT Player in April last year and have kind of run it ever since. I would say it's already kind of evolved from where we started. It started as a reaction to a situation, and we moved very quickly to bring some presentations with partner organisations. We actually started with an opera, not film at all, and we've had all sorts, music and drama and poetry and everything on there. And now I think we're starting to look at how it's embeds into our organisation in a longer term way, and how we might kind of build that digital offer into our programme. So try to see the digital space as not even just another screen, but actually just kind of part of the cultural offer of the organisation. So that's the biggest thing from a kind of film programming side of things. The other things we've been working on are much more boring, around health and safety, but necessary. And I think we've been really keen that as soon as we're able to, we get up and running as quick as possible and are able to operate safely and confidently in the new environment of social distancing as was. And then we were open for 10 weeks, August to October, then we closed again, and then we opened again for 2 weeks, and then we closed again. So we had a kind of on and off again year, which means that we're really good at turning on and off again. So the first time turning the cinema off was a bit of a shock to the system. The other 2 times we're just chill, we just turn the lights off and go home.
Yeah.
And the same for kind of turning it back on again. It's much quicker once you've done it once. So I think we've learned an awful lot this year about how to react and kind of ride this awful time.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Joan. David, you're in the Dating Amber has come out this year, so you've obviously had quite a challenging year in that sense. How have you kind of, as a writer and director, responded to how these things have gone?
Well, I think Dating Amber came out in May, which wasn't a part of the plan. I think we were in the final kind of weeks of post-production when the gravity of COVID kind of was coming clear, and we were discussing with our distributor whether we would delay the film until later in 2020, when at that time we thought everything would be fine again, or what do we do? And suddenly our distributor got this really wonderful offer from Amazon Prime to make it a Prime original, and they wanted to release it in really quickly in May. So we kind of went directly from post-production to having the film released in last summer. So it was a very quick kind of about turn and kind of reconfiguring how we wanted to do things. And so the first kind of period of COVID was consumed with the streaming release of the film. And that went really, really well for us. We were really happy with that. I mean, I think it was a shame we missed, having that big theatrical experience we hoped for. But we were arguably we reached a bigger audience with Prime than maybe we would have, and I think we reached a younger audience than we might have with theatrical. So so that was great, and then the rest of it, I think, you kind of put any plans of production to side, and I just used the rest of the time to write and develop my kind of slate of projects. And I think we were really lucky in Ireland, and I think in England as well, with the various funding bodies like Screen Ireland have put a lot of funding towards development for producers and writers and directors. So I was able to avail of some of those interesting funds. So yeah, I mean, like everybody, quite well. I think. Yeah.
And what about Wildcard, Patrick? Obviously, it's been a big year in terms of titles with Wolfwalkers, but how has a company like yours responded?
Yeah, it was a shock. We were at the Berlin film market in February. Essentially buying movies for the year. And putting together a slate, and then it all happened very fast. So we would have had a very busy slate of films last year. Now, we were lucky in one way that we weren't on the eve of a massive release where we had committed a lot of money to. So, we would have done things like Black 47 and Young Offenders in the past, which would have been significantly, big projects for us. We would have invested a lot of money into those campaigns. So, we were lucky in a way that we just, we hadn't committed all that money and they were just about to go out into the market. So the films we did have, just kind of very briefly, we would have kind of two sides to our business. On one side, it would be the films that we would kind of either produce or acquire ourselves, that we would own all the rights in. That could be for Ireland or Ireland and the UK. And then on the other side of the business, we act as a sub-distributor for some UK companies. So we would work commonly with Altitude and Vertigo in the UK. And David's film was acquired by Altitude. So we would have been on the theatrical release of that film in Ireland. So once the lockdown kind of was coming, in March, we would have been prepping the release of Vivarium, Lorcan Finnegan's film with Jesse Eisenberg, and also Sea Fever, Nessa Hardiman's horror film. So they were kind of set to go out. Yeah, so that they were kind of ready to go into cinemas. And then once it kind of looked like what was happening, and they both premiered at the Dublin Film Festival. So that'll just give you a sense of, the timelines on it, and that was February. And, we'd loads of coverage for the film, and we'd done junkets already. And so what happened with those films, they both kind of morphed into essentially day and date releases. So Vivarium would have been with Vertigo, and Sea Fever with Signature Entertainment. And so day and date essentially is when, or normally day and date is when you go into cinemas and also on video on demand or DVD at the same time. So, in this scenario, they just kind of moved on to kind of digital only releases. Now, what we did in that scenario was when the cinemas did reopen in July, we had those films prepped already, so we would have had posters, trailers, everything ready. So we would have offered them to cinemas to play once they reopened. So they were essentially, somewhat fresh films, and Dating Amber would have been the same. And then once those restrictions lifted in the summer, we were very busy. We would have looked after films like Unhinged, the Russell Crowe film, 100% Wolf, which is a kids animation, and a few others. So we were quite busy working on a lot of those titles. And then, in the Republic anyway, and I think it was in the North as well, closed for another period. And then once December came about, we had Crock of Gold, a few rounds with Shane McGowan and Wolfwalkers. So, in terms of the difference of what it did accelerate that idea of, a lot of the cinemas normally would kind of hold a kind of theatrical window, let's say. So a lot of them became more flexible in the period in terms of playing films that, may already be available on video on demand platforms that we're not holding to the full 16 weeks. So it did give us a bit of flexibility that we're able to kind of essentially exploit some of these projects on non-theatrical formats, although we did feel it was lacking because, I feel personally every film we've ever distributed in Wildcard has been theatrical led. So we're not just, we don't do direct home end releases. So, it's a core kind of philosophy of the company to, that we do acquire films essentially made for the big screen. So, there was definitely a mental shift in that. And, we did, we retooled our website just to make it more accessible to get to our films on the different platforms. And we're lucky that kind of actually similar to David was saying there, Screen Ireland, we're supportive. Even in 2018, 2019, you're conscious like, are we just distributing films this way because this is the way films have always been distributed? And you do those big ads and you do those things in that way, so the lockdowns now have given us an opportunity because we, all the staff have been kept on. So, our brains have been kind of switched on to kind of, really devising, new ways to do things. So, once the summer, rolls around and cinemas come back open and we're back releasing our own titles, we're definitely going to be doing things in a different way.
But does that mean that you're going to do less kind of physical advertising in terms of billboards and buses and things and more online, or?
Yeah, like when we redid the website, we kind of built in certain tools there so they can, like, I don't want to get too into it, but if we do paid digital advertising to direct people to our website to watch a trailer, find out more about the film, we're incorporating kind of data capture technology within that, so we can kind of essentially over time really create a digital kind of view of the people interested in our films that we can kind of retarget then in digital marketing as the years go on. So, we'd like to think that in time, and we've been doing this already, that we'll get a really in-depth kind of, knowledge of the Irish theatrical kind of audience.
Can I just jump back in and say just a question that I had around how this has challenged you? I mean, you've all sort of described very robust, and I think right across the exhibition sector and the film industry, we've all been quite kind of, yes, and we're doing this, and we're doing this, we're doing this, and we're doing, it's been very kind of robust and positive, I suppose. But in terms of your own companies, what's been the most challenging element to you? And I mean, I suppose that could be a personal thing, and in your role, or it can be a wider company-wide kind of thing. And maybe David, maybe as a producer director working sort of on their own, if you like,
I mean, I think it's, I think the big challenge is just, I mean, early on, you kind of realize that you probably won't be shooting anything for quite a while. Certain things that I was in line to do just didn't happen, whether it be TV or other things. So you just have to kind of refocus and decide what you can do. And then there was one or two projects that were set up in the US that you realize they probably don't want a show about a pandemic during a pandemic. So you're in discussions with those producers about holding off until when things calm down. So you kind of have to reassess what you have and kind of just take the opportunity to develop and write new projects and kind of have a kind of a strong slate ready to go when things are ready to go. And I've been, I've been really lucky. I've had plenty kind of writing gigs to keep me going, because a lot of, crew members and solely directors haven't had that. So I do feel fortunate in that respect. But it's been, it's had its challenges for sure. And, there's definitely certain projects that I don't anticipate will be happening now because of it. Because I think you have to, I don't think people are going to want something very, very dark in terms of TVs.
Yeah, that's true.
Digital platform is seeing that as somewhere for films to graduate to or from, kind of playing supply and demand a little bit with the screens and making sure that the screen space is utilised to its best potential, but that we are not, squeezing out smaller films. We're giving them space to grow as well. So I think there's going to be a lot of challenges, an awful lot of challenges in the year to come. And in fact, it will be, I suppose, in a way more challenging for us as a business, kind of once we're up and running, and potentially we have to bring all the staff back in from furlough, and we have to buy all the stock back in that we've already thrown away 3 times, and we have to kind of get back into the everyday business of running the cinema. Then we are looking at, potentially higher risks to the business model. But that's why we're here. We're not here to run a closed cinema. We're here to have screens with as many people as we're allowed to get in them.
Yeah, and that just brings on to the next question here about kind of the long-term impacts of this on the collective experience, and it's sort of a question to all of you about where you think this, in terms of audiences. I just want to bring this back to audiences as well. When cinemas reopened again and closed and reopened again, there was an appetite there from audiences to get involved and to be there. Unfortunately, David, you missed out on seeing your film on a big screen. But hopefully you will be able to do that at some point. What do you think? I'm just going to go back to Joan from an exhibition point of view. That the impact this will have on audiences. Obviously, there's a lot of variables in terms of social distancing, and but kind of long term. What are your thoughts on that?
I think there's two things I think will have a significant impact. I think audiences are creatures of habit. And we, audience development and marketing and everything we do is about increasing the habit and building brand loyalty and getting people to make the choice about which cinema they're coming to and stuff like that. And we've had, what will be probably best part of a year, 18 months, where that habit has been broken. And that is quite damaging, I think, to cinemas in the long term. I think there will absolutely be a mad rush to go to the cinema when they first open. But for us, it's about how do we make sure that mad rush translates to somebody who is going to come 6 times a year. And it's not just going to be this peak. And in a way, that peak is never going to be fulfilling its full potential, because the capacity will still be low. So although we'll be excited and the people that come will be excited, it actually isn't going to make us huge amounts of money, and it isn't going to be enough for us to kind of ride through to the rest of the year. So I think there's a bit of a risk about how we kind of make sure that we manage that audience relationship to build back those habits that have perhaps been allowed or been necessitated to kind of drop. And I think the other thing is around selling the experience of cinema and getting people to understand that actually, what we are selling as a product is the film, but actually what we're selling is an experience. And you can watch the film in your own home and have an experience of that product, but it is not the same as the experience that you have in the cinema. And I think that will be really key to all cinemas, really, to be telling that story about, it's about a night out, which we are all desperate to have, I'm sure. It's about being able to meet up with your friends, fingers crossed they're allowed to do that. It's about, having a nice drink and a chat in the bar and talking about the film with someone other than your significant other who you've talked to for years and years. And it's finding those, unique points which are specifically cinema. And from a program perspective, that will be, key is not necessarily finding films that are only available for cinemas. I mean, we've never been like a wholly reliant on exclusivity. We've never been particularly averse to day and date bookings anyway, because it's never massively affected our audiences, but we have always wanted to be doing something different and offering something a bit, you know, from a program perspective, a bit unique. So I think that will be where we emphasize is this what you're getting when you come to our cinema is this specific cinema experience. And I think every cinema will be doing the same, is kind of framing their sales pitch in a different way to come and see this film, but it's come and see this film in this environment with this sound, with this bar, you know, trying to kind of explain and emphasize that it's always going to be more than what you can do in your home. And then I think from a personal perspective, I am also an audience member frequently. I think I like, you know, we're all desperate to see our friends and family, but once I've seen them once, I think I'll be all right. And then I really just want to sit in a room with some strangers and not be like having to have, you know, extended how has your year been conversations with absolutely every single one of them, which is, I want to have that, but I want to then it to be done, and I want to sit and see people I sort of fairly recognize because they maybe come to the cinemas like sometimes, and people I definitely don't recognize, and enjoy that collective experience together, particularly for something that's, you know, going to have audible audience reactions. I'm absolutely dying to hear somebody do a big audience gasp or have like loads of crying, overhearing loads of crying. That'd be nice.
I bet you there'd be a lot of clapping at the end whenever things get back to normal as well.
Yeah, well, I might make that sort of obligatory.
David, did you feel, obviously there was circumstances out of your control that your film didn't get the theatrical release that it deserved? It is a brilliant film if anybody hasn't seen it. How from a personal level, how did you feel about the film going on that kind of medium rather than having the big theatrical release?
I mean, you know, like you said, it's out of my control. So I tried not to dwell on it and just focus on the positives. You know, that we had this big platform in which to release it, and an opportunity that a lot of the films around us weren't given with Amazon. So that was great. So I think it was just focusing on what we had. But of course, you know, I wanted the film to be theatrical, and you know, I was really excited about releasing with Altitude and Wildcard in Ireland, and I think we had lots of hopes about making it quite significant. So yeah, it's you know, it's a real shame, but I mean, you know, I'm of an age where I love the theatrical experience. I think when we were thinking of theatrical, I always imagined it would be this, because it's set in the 90s and everything, I thought it would be a nostalgic audience of people my age. And I think what we found I'm sure we may have gotten a younger audience, but I guess it's really hard to imagine a small indie film getting teenagers, because they have all these other massive Disney products or whatnot. So what was really interesting with Amazon is that we managed to we got a surprisingly young audience. And I think a lot of the posts and messages that the actors in particular are getting are really young. And I don't know if we would have gotten that with theatrical. I don't know how much that demographic goes to the cinema.
Hard to reach demographic. We
all.
Yeah.
So I mean, I think that's a real positive, is that we actually got a teenage audience that we hadn't. Maybe we would have. It's such an unknowable. But that was great. But yeah, look, it's a big shame. I think I think as a filmmaker, the theatrical experience is what you want, but it's also an experience that's really filled with dread. You know, I think going back to what Joan was saying, that you're given this like 3 to 4 a week in which you have an opportunity to make your film, and if it doesn't perform, you're out, and you're very quickly deemed a success or failure. And you don't get that with streaming. And I think that's actually a really lovely thing with streaming, is you can be a slow burn and you can build an audience. And I think, you know, theatrical is increasingly cutthroat for films, particularly smaller films, if they are given that. So I think, you know, going forward, it'd be nice to see that maybe change a little bit, and maybe that's a part of what Day and Date will become. But yeah, I mean, I you know, when my first film, The Cured, was released during a heat wave, and so we got nobody in the first weekend, and that's kind of gutting. So you know, and maybe you think, oh, maybe if we'd gone with Netflix or Amazon, or had they wanted us, we would have had a very different experience. So it's real, like it swings and roundabouts. But I think going forward, I would love to see cinemas be less reliant on those massive box office films, that have no loyalty to the distributors or exhibitors. So it'd be nice to see maybe exhibitors and distributors start looking at smaller films and different ways of showing and distributing films, and maybe taking more opportunities with smaller films that I think very often don't get that opportunity. But yeah, look, we're really happy with how the film went. It went really, really well with Prime, and that's great. And I'll always think of what would have been with cinemas, but it could have been released and could have bombed, and that would have been crap.
We wouldn't have let that happen, Dave.
No, Patrick wouldn't have let that happen. We would have been released like during a heat wave, and that would have.
We would have actually. Now that I think, yeah.
Yeah. So I think the cinema, like increasingly, I'm talking to filmmakers, there is a huge appeal to streamers because you aren't going to be deemed a failure within a week. And that is quite bruising to a filmmaker after years and years of work. And you do get an audience that cinemas, I think, can sometimes do better to get in. I mean, Queens is amazing. I lived in Belfast for a while and I adore it. But they're not all that great. So I think there's an opportunity now and I don't know the ins and outs of the industry from that perspective. I think there's an opportunity now for distributors and exhibitors to kind of really look at what films they show and how they show it and how they give films an opportunity to maybe grow.
And Patrick, what about you in terms of audiences long term and theatrical releases? I know you've touched on it a bit there, but have you any other thoughts on that?
Yeah, like I do believe, like with the vaccinations and everything, like I do think people will come back once they're open, and they've given it enough time now that, like I was involved in kind of lobbying to kind of the Irish government back in kind of October, November about getting cinemas open in December, and once you kind of deep dived into a lot of the data, and saw what the cinemas were doing in terms of safety protocols, from my perspective, it was quite impressive, So, and, just from kind of audience feedback I've had, people have had very positive experiences about going to the cinema, last year when they did reopen. So I think that sentiment will still be there this time. And, I guess in the summer, what Joan was saying about the release calendar was kind of bare, it was hard to get new films, and a lot of distributors and studios offered library titles, which didn't really do the business in the summer. But this time around, it feels that a lot of distributors probably saw some of those films have success, and I've even seen press releases today saying about 17th of March or 17th of May release dates. So I don't think Joan is going to have any problem booking her cinema in May. But I think it'll be a spike. I think there'll be a spike of kind of content in kind of May, June coming out, and it might get a bit quieter then. I think the studios will probably need a little bit more time to fully gear up. They'll have a lot of stuff on the shelf, maybe, let's say, they're contractually kind of obliged to give theatrical releases to. So I would say the summer will definitely be up and down, hit and miss, but I think long term I'd be quite confident, and I think maybe a lot of cinemas and distributors have learned, not to take the industry for granted and not to take audiences for granted. And, I feel like we never did. We treasured every ticket kind of bought for any of our films. And, but I think, it might have created more of a conversation, you think, between kind of cinemas and their audience. And, yeah, I would be optimistic. And from our own perspective, we've got 4 really good titles of our own coming later in the year. Deadly Cuts, which is a comedy, which I think it'll do well. Redemption of a Rogue, another comedy, black comedy set in Cavan. Father of the Cyborgs, fascinating documentary, and then a horror film for Halloween, The 10 Steps. So we're very, very happy. We think we've got a strong slate of our own titles, and then we're doing kind of work for other distributors. We'll be releasing things like Wildfire, Kathy Brady's film in June, hopefully, and we'll be doing The Boys from County Hell, another Northern Ireland project. So, that's a really fun vampire comedy. So we've a really, really busy slate, and that's not even all of them, So yeah, I'm optimistic, and I think what David said as well. Like I think people probably will want to go and have a good time. I think there will be that demand for, I wouldn't say lighter films as such, but entertaining for sure. And if it's a dark kind of comedy that's going to be challenging audiences, I'm not sure people, maybe for QFT audiences, but in anything wider than that could be a tough sell. Um, yeah. Yeah, if it's any kind of a dark relationship, I think Netflix recently, and I think everyone's kind of laughing. Like, I don't know how it's done, but I think it was some I can't name of it now, but it was some kind of relationship drama set in one room, and a lot of people were saying it wasn't really they didn't want to see themselves on screen. But yeah, so I think there will be that, and I'm excited. Really looking forward to kicking it off again when the time comes. As long as I think it will be safe. That's the main thing. We would hate to do anything that would put anyone's health at risk. So as long as Joan can tell us that it's okay, we'll take the exhibitor's word for it.
Yeah, there was no cases in like the entire world, no clusters in cinema.
No, nothing at all.
Nothing like that.
That's all very positive notes to end on. I'm just going to take a few questions now, if that's okay. I'm just getting them sent through to me, so excuse me for letting down here. A question for Joan. Do you know yet what the first films that will be shown at KFT when we reopen, hopefully before the summer?
I don't know. There's so many that we've been sort of tracking for a long time. I would say, what are we looking forward to? Nomadland, if we can get that, if that still gets theatrical release, we would adore being able to play that because it's fantastic. First Cow, who doesn't want to watch a film about a cow? Ammonite, The Father, Wildfire, we can't wait for. Herself, if that's still going to get theatrical. There's so many. It feels like, these are titles that we've been like desperate to book and desperate to play for a long time. And we know that audiences will come back for them. It's just whether or not they're all going to get full theatrical releases or kind of what the plans from distribution are. But I think Patrick's right. There'll be this kind of like cram of film. There'll be loads of people suddenly trying to get release dates. So it might be a bit hectic, but we'll try.
There's so many, like you've got stuff like even Minari and Sound of Metal, and so they're like, sounds like they're 5-star movies, and they're all going to be there in May probably.
Is there a concern with some of those, like, not that they're all amazing, but like there's films that were set to be released and had this huge amount of advertising already done, and then were shut down, which I forget hadn't been released. Is there a concern with some of those titles that just the excitement has come and gone, and it's not going to come back even if they haven't been released yet? Like I know it's different with blockbusters, but they've had so many teases over the last couple of years, and it's like I don't really care.
I always think that people think they might have seen it already, especially if it's a sequel. Like, did I see that one? I think I've seen that one. You know,
I think you mentioned it yourself. I feel like I've seen it, even though I haven't seen it. And yeah, I just wonder if there's a concern that
I think it'll be kind of I suppose up for the distributors to kind of re-enliven those debates and make sure that pieces are kind of whatever press has happened keep the conversation going.
We find often as well, sometimes the talent involved, like if it's maybe not directors, they're always good at trying to sell their movies, but in terms of cast, sometimes they feel, oh, that was ages ago, I've kind of moved on, I've got this new thing, so it is hard. Like we've got an Anya Taylor-Joy movie going to come out, and we definitely get the sense that she's on kind of Queen's Gambit mode and everything else, and it's like, oh, so there's a will that should you just get a sense maybe some casts kind of want to talk about the newer stuff they're doing, but let's see. It is our job to reinvigorate an audience for it, and just that's part of the gig.
Yeah. A question for Patrick. Are you seeing or expecting to see a shortage of acquisitions due to lockdown blocking film? If blocking filming, if so, how do you anticipate dealing with it? I just know anecdotally, production actually has managed to continue.
Yeah, it's been
Well,
like that film I mentioned, the 10 steps that would have shot during COVID. And we have a sister company, production company, that would have made been in production on Foundation, like for Apple. They would have done Winx, the Fate Saga, although that might have wrapped before COVID, and a couple of other things. So, and I know the crew, they kind of get tested twice a week. So the shooting crew were able to kind of put procedures in place to actually shoot during level 5. Now, what happened was the security and safety protocols going along with COVID did ramp up kind of costs associated with production. So you would have probably stalled, some project probably would have stalled at a kind of lower level maybe. But like, as I said, we've got a pretty busy slate for the year. 2022 seems, I don't know, we're just trying to take each couple of months as it comes. It's hard even to plan into 2022 at the moment. But personally speaking, in terms of wildcard, and even those films like, Minari and Sound of Metal, that's Altitude and Vertigo, who we work a lot with as well. So I imagine we will be doing kind of projects for them through the year, and maybe others as well. So but yeah, I would say that might be at the kind of lower end of the scale, and actually it might be a factor for independents that would kind of rely maybe on the smaller films. So it could be an issue, but I'm not letting it worry me too much at the moment, if I'm honest.
good. We'll just wait and see. David, what are you up to now? Just to finish off, what are you up?
I'm desperately trying to get a haircut. I've been really busy, so I think, as I said, there's production put to bed for a while, but we're casting my third film, and then I'm developing a couple of TV series, one with my brother, another with Scott Free. So I've been really busy with writing, which has been great. And I've kind of, I'm sick of writing now, but I've been really busy with that stuff. And now kind of hopefully by the kind of in the summer, I'll get to shoot something else. But let's see how things play out. I mean, as Patrick said, things have been able to shoot now through COVID. And I think, there's like a friend of mine was going into production or something, and they went through 28 line producers before they could get one that was free, which is incredible, just that many people are actually working throughout this period. So yeah, I'm hopeful I'll get to shoot something this year, but yeah, busy writing.
Yeah, well, the Northman's just finished shooting here, and Dungeons and Dragons starting, and it's all going on, so that's all very positive. So we've covered quite a bit, and that's been a very positive conversation. And so on behalf of Film Hub NI and Northern Ireland Screen for helping fund this, I'd just like to say a really big thank you to our brilliant panelists. And we will be back at the cinema watching films made by David and distributed by Patrick, and hopefully see us at the pictures soon.